must have by now known about the present DMK government's atrocities.
The
Present DMK government. Derogatory speeches about divinity, gods, goddesses, religion, etc. from the newspapers. So the question goes to all the three.
You see, DMK and atrocities go together. So you need not have to say DMK atrocities. You see, I have been experiencing Tamil Nadu from very early years. I was a Congress activist in late 1960s and 70s. And I found that the society and politics were completely aligned then against God. I used to see hardly 100 people, 200 people in temples. And the society has completely moved away from ungodly, anti-God politics today. It is politics which is trying to find how to, for example, today I heard Stalin's speech abusing his ministers for talking anti-God, anti-Hindu. He didn't use these words, but he said, because all of you are talking like this, I am not able to sleep. So let us not too much worry about what the DMK does. The number of people attending the temples today are millions and millions. You know, the number of people going to Shabarimala today from Tamil Nadu is almost 15 million to 18 million. The number of people going round, as Ranga said, the Tiruvannamalai, Girivalam, millions. This we never knew. These people who are going to Melmaruttur and this golden temple in Vellore, millions. You know, Hinduism has a non-formal way of awakening itself. We don't have a church, we don't have a... But there is a self-awakening which has come, which has de-Dravidianized the Dravidian parties. They are parties only in name today. They are in their last leg. I would like Ranga to bring it out even more, because he runs a very popular channel. He must bring out the de-Dravidianization of Dravidian parties. Then they will know where they stand. All the Dravidian women are going to temples. Men are talking against God. This is politics, that is society.
Has judiciary also become an oak? Example, Justice Chandrachud and extramarital relationship of women.
I will look at the judiciary in two ways. Actually, judiciary has rescued the Hindu character of India. Many people do not know it. You know, if you look at how Indian Republic started in 1950s, Jawaharlal Nehru said there is no communalism other than Hindu communalism in India. And Islamic communalism is aggressive, but Hindu communalism is more dangerous. The most popular man, the most powerful man, an opposition-free man, he raised the bar so much against the Hindus. The Hindus virtually accepted a second-rate position in India for 25 years. Then in 1976, the Supreme Court delivered a judgment which was not noticed by anybody. And the judgment was in a wealth tax case. The case was about a Hindu family, a very famous family here. And one of the members of the family married a German Christian lady, and they got a son whom they named as Nicholas. And the father died, and they wanted to know whether the family is a Hindu undivided family. A Christian wife, a Christian son, a Hindu father dead. The Supreme Court quoted the Encyclopedia Britannica and said Hinduism does not depend on the existence or non-existence of God, or whether there is one God or many. Hinduism is the only religion which will permit even a Christian to be part of the Hindu undivided family. Whether the judgment stated the ultimate Hindu position or not in philosophy, it stated the Hindu position in polity. This judgment, which was a constitution-based judgment, was the basis on which the Hindutva decision was taken in 1995, where the Supreme Court said Hindutva is not communal. It is the ethos of India. It is the culture of India. It is the way of life of India. There is a religious content in it, but these three things are supervening over the religious content. This was how the Hindutva appeal of the BJP and Shiv Sena were declared as not violative of the principle against communalism which the law had set out, by which the Supreme Court virtually aligned the Indian idea of secularism with Hindutva. No paper will report, even the BJP people have not studied this, they have not spoken about it. So, after nothing happened, afterwards Narasimha Rao kept mum about the judgment. Vajpayee government did not make use of the judgment. Then when Sonia Gandhi came, she filed an appeal. She filed a review petition against it. The Supreme Court kept quiet. In 2016, the Supreme Court took up the review petition and said, we are not going to review the Hindutva aspect of the judgment. 7-judge bench of the Supreme Court. And then they filed another review petition. That was also dismissed. So today, the judiciary has done its duty for the Hindus. But the Hindus have not taken it to, Hindu leaders have not taken it to the Hindus. So what will the judiciary do? After this, the Hindu character of India is constitutionalized. Do we know this? So I am eternally grateful to the society, to the Supreme Court for having saved the Hindu character of India. There may be some problem with the judiciary, is there? That is because of wokeism. What the modern world talks about, they will not affect the brand of India, but they will affect the Hindu character of the families, of Indian women, of Indian youth. That's a different battle. But the judiciary has put the best stamp on the Indian polity by saying Hindutva is the ethos, value system and the culture of India.
Isn't there a need to compromise on our ideology when it comes to modern day trade? So that is what is the question. So are we compromising on our dharma?
Actually, in India there is no ideology at all. There is only philosophy here. Ideology thinks the other person is wrong and I am right. This is the problem of the world. There are ideological religions. Fascism is an ideology, communism is an ideology, wokeism is an ideology, modernity is an ideology, but Hinduism is a philosophy. It thinks even the woke may have a viewpoint. That may be the weakness of Hinduism, but Hinduism is not an ideology. Sanatana Dharma is not an ideology. So let us first give up the word ideology. In fact, many people talk about RSS ideology. The person who was regarded as the philosopher of RSS, Guruji Golwalkar, in his entire book Bunch of Thoughts, he has never used the word ideology, he has always used the word philosophy. So ours is a philosophy. We don't have an ideological enemy. Ideology means you must have an adversary. The biggest problem of Hinduism is it doesn't have an ideological adversary. Every other religion has an ideological adversary. Its gods hate other gods. Its systems hate other systems. So Hinduism's flexibility, which itself is a weakness, but this is what will enable us to deal with the world. So let us be clear, because the terminologies that we are using are very confusing. Actually, Rajiv ji used to talk about how our terminology for dharma, there is no equivalent. For samaj, there is no equivalent. There is a problem in handling India through English. So we should not, it is only darshanas. Even philosophy is a very approximate word. It is darshanas. So it is the way we look at things. So I don't think we are in an ideological tussle. நான் முதல்ல துக்ளக் ஆண்டு விழாவில் 1994-95 அப்போ தமிழில் பேசின போது எனக்கு பல பேர் ஃபோன் பண்ணி, நீங்கள் தமிழில் பேசுகிறீங்களே, தமிழில் பேசுவதே தமிழ்நாட்டில் ஒரு பெரிய ஒரு ஆச்சரியமான விஷயம் ஆகிவிட்டது, இந்த தமிழ்னு சொன்னவங்க என்ன பண்ணியிருக்காங்க அப்படின்னாக்கா, தமிழில் பேசுகிறவங்களே தமிழ்நாட்டில் குறைந்து விட்டார்கள் என்பது தான் உண்மை. ஏன் நாம் தமிழில் பேச வேண்டியது அவசியம், ஆனால் எங்கே பேச வேண்டும், எங்கே பேசக்கூடாது, எங்கே பேச வேண்டிய அவசியம் இல்லைங்கிறதையும் நாம் புரிந்து கொள்ளணும். இங்கே ராஜீவ் மல்ஹோத்ரா ஆங்கிலத்தில் புத்தகம் எழுதியிருக்கார், அவருக்கு தமிழ் தெரியாது. அவருக்கு சில கருத்துக்களை கூற வேண்டிய கடமை இருக்குது எனக்கு. அதனால் நான் தமிழில் பேசுகிறது மூலமாக உங்களுக்கு புரியும், அவருக்கு புரியாது. அவருக்கு புரிய வேண்டியது அவசியம். ஏனென்றால் போன முறை அவர் புக்கு எழுதி அவர் டெல்லியில் விவேகானந்தா இன்டர்நேஷ்னல் ஃபவுண்டேஷன் அங்கேயும் ஒரு பெரிய ஒரு நிகழ்ச்சி நடந்தது. அதில் தான் இந்த புத்தகத்தை ரிலீஸ் பண்ணாங்க. இங்கே சென்னையிலேயும் அது நடந்தது. அப்போ சில கருத்துக்களை நான் கூறினேன். அந்த கருத்துக்கள் அடிப்படையில் தான் எங்களுக்குள்ளேயே விவாதம் தொடங்கியது. அதனால் அவருக்கும் புரிய வேண்டி இருக்கிறதுனால நான் ஆங்கிலத்தில் பேசுவது தான் முறை என்று நினைத்து ஆங்கிலத்தில் பேசலாம் என்று நினைக்கிறேன். இந்த புத்தகம் இருக்கிறத இதை மாத்திரம் தமிழில் சொல்லிடுறேன், அதுக்கப்புறம் ஆங்கிலத்துக்கு போகிறேன். என்னுடைய நண்பர் ஒருவர் இந்த ஹிந்து முஸ்லீம், ஹிந்து கிறிஸ்டியன் இந்த இந்த பிரச்சனையை பற்றி புக் எழுதினார். நான் சொல்கிறது 1950. அவருக்கும் தொடர்பு 1980. அவர் அந்த மாதிரி புத்தகம் எழுதியிருக்காருன்னு கூட எனக்கு தெரியாது. அவர் பேர் ராம் ஸ்வரூப், பல பேர் கேள்விப்பட்டிருக்கலாம். சீதாராம் கோயல், இவங்க 2 பேரும் 1950, 60, 70 பிரம்மாண்டமான வேலை பண்ணாங்க. ஆனால் அவங்க அந்த வேலை பண்ணாங்கன்னு கூட யாரும் தெரியாது. அந்த புத்தகத்தை பப்ளிஷ் பண்ணுறதுக்கு கூட யாரும் முன் வரலை. அவங்களே வாய்ஸ் இந்தியா பப்ளிகேஷன்ஸ் சொல்லி ஒரு தனி பப்ளிகேஷன் கம்பெனி ஆரம்பித்து அவங்களே அதை பிரிண்ட் பண்ணி பப்ளிஷ் பண்ணாங்க. 1980 அவர் எங்கிட்ட பேசும்பொழுது நான் இந்த 30 வருஷமாக ஏன் இந்த வேலையை பண்ணுறேன் அப்படின்னு கேட்டேன். ஐ எம் ப்ரொடியூசிங் சீட் தாட்ஸ் அப்படின்னு சொன்னேன். இதெல்லாம் ஒரு சீடு, அதை விதைக்கணும். அது ஒரு பிரம்மாண்டமாக ஒரு காலத்தில் நான் இருப்பேனோ இல்லையோ இது ஒரு ஆலமரம் போல வரும்னு சொன்னார். அவர் அன்றைக்கு சொன்னதெல்லாம் இன்றைக்கு நடப்பதை நான் கண்ணால் பார்க்குறேன். ஸோ திஸ் இஸ் எ சீட் தாட். Seed thoughts require enormous amount of work. It is not like, writing a book, writing a drama, writing a cinema story. It requires enormous understanding of not only a particular subject, but about what is happening in the world, what is happening in India, at least in the context of this book. It's a monumental work. In fact, I have studied only the introductory part of it. But it is something which requires continuous reading in every context. Why it is happening like this? Why it is happening like this? Every event that is happening in the society, in the economy, in the corporate world, in politics, can be related to the chapters in the book. It is not something which is happening on its own. There are things called spontaneous things which happen on their own. But there are certain things which are designed, which are strategized, which are imparted, which are promoted, and for which funds are given, ideas are given. So this book explains the multidisciplinary ways into which India is being invaded. So this is a very, very important work for people who think of India not only as a nation which has a right to exist in this world, but it has a duty to tell something to the world. The more important part is this, which I will also try and explain. See, the foundation of the entire Western exercise, whether it is Harvard University or Stanford University or some of these think tanks, are the kind of new thoughts which they are generating and exporting, is the Western supremacy. The Western supremacy has been ruling this world. Minimum, I'm not talking about the colonial period, I'm talking about the post-colonial period. At least for the last 60, 70 years, the Western supremacy has been driving the world. But my understanding of Western supremacy, about which I will tell you, it contains its own seeds of destruction. I am not talking philosophically. I am not talking from historical perspective. Some empire one day or the other will have to collapse. I will give you practical examples of how Western civilization's years are numbered. I will tell you 3 reasons. You know, the West is now fighting for survival. That's the most important thing. People think the West is now, we are fighting. No, we are not fighting. Yes, we have problems. The World Economic Forum, about which reference was made here by both Rajiv ji and Vijaya. 2 great men, one of them they refer to, George Soros. Great men in the sense they are greatly known. Second is Henry Kissinger. You know, George Soros is an irresponsible person who has huge amount of money. He doesn't know what to do with it. And what he spoke in that meeting and what Henry Kissinger spoke in that meeting should give us an idea as to where the West stands. This is after the Ukraine war. You know, after the Ukraine war, the situation is so completely changed. The Western civilization has begun fight for survival. This is the message delivered by the Ukraine war. In that, Henry Kissinger said, I don't know what we will do. We have to stop this war in the next few months. Otherwise, the world order will be permanently restructured. This is the word he used. He talked about change in the world order. When the COVID advent came and the rise of China became evident. But in the World Economic Forum meeting held in May, I think, he said the world order will be permanently restructured unless we do something to stop the war. The war has to stop. Then spoke George Soros. He said, I see the destruction of Western civilization. You know why? The Western civilization is founded on premises which have no social base. It is state-centric. It is power-centric. It is military-centric. It is institution-centric. So all the problems that we are seeing is the institutional power of the West, because I have experienced it. I have been studying this for the last 30 years from the Indian perspective. And so we must not for a moment think the West is there to permanently rule. We must think of how to bring down the Western imperialism. I am not talking about imperialism in the sense of the communists to talk about imperialism. I am talking about imperialism in the sense of civilizational imperialism. And we can do it, and for which we need all this data, we need all these seed thoughts. And we have to work out global alliances for this, because every nation is affected by what the West is doing. You see, the Freedom House, which keeps saying, rating democracy, there are at least 30, 40 indices about democracy, freedom, press freedom and all that. The Freedom House has also brought out a book which says the liberal democracies are failing. There is backsliding of democracies. In Eastern Europe, most of the democratic countries are going to be not democratic in the next decade. Only 40% of the youths are voting in the West. The more freedom you give, wokeism comes and makes a person enjoy more. He doesn't even care for the institutions that give him the freedom. In fact, there is a research done by our own leftist scholars about Indian democracy. In the West, minorities vote less. Uneducated people vote less. Poor people vote less. But in India, it is the reverse. It is the lowest caste which votes more. It is the minorities who vote more. It is the uneducated people who vote more. It is the educated people who vote less. It is the upper caste people who vote less. You know whose research it was? Yogendra Yadav's. So Indian democracy's bottom spread is very, very strong. We have 32 lakh elected people in India. This Professor Vaidyanathan's fantastic formulation. 32 lakh people, 3.2 million people linking Indian democracy and 6.8 lakh villages and towns in this country. So, our society, our democracy is a civilizational democracy. It's not an individualist democracy. It is not a liberal democracy. We have aligned caste, we have aligned religion, we have aligned languages, we have aligned regional aspirations. See, our democracy is something like an all-encompassing idea. The reason is our real strength is in this society. It is not in the state. You know, we have 6,68,000 villages and towns I mentioned to you, because these are important points for people in the West to understand how difficult it is to defeat India. You can disturb India, you cannot defeat India. Simple reason I will give you. The 6,68,000 villages, you tell me how many police stations we have? This is a question which I have asked in many meetings. 12,800 police stations. You know how we are running as a country. You know, you look at the data published by the United Nations. India is probably the lowest in all kinds of crimes, whether it is murder, whether it is dacoity, whether it is rape. Nobody has compared. How a society which is running on informal and non-formal discipline. We are an informal and non-formal disciplined country. Respect for parents, respect for elders, respect for women. These are not rules legislated by the state. Legislature can destroy this non-formal discipline. So this is what has sustained India. All the forces which have come from outside have failed because they have not been able to defeat this non-formal normative order. This is not a formal order, it's a non-formal order. You can see, I have gone to Arunachal Pradesh, I have seen the same discipline. Respect for parents, respect for elders, respect for teachers, respect for women. You know, in Arunachal Pradesh, in villages, the boys who are not married cannot be in the village. They will be given a place outside the village. The qualification for entering the village is marriage. And they will be fed outside the village. This is not legislated, it's a non-formal. This followed. So, the soul of India is not formalized. So, it is very difficult to defeat India. We must understand why I am saying this is we must nurture these qualities. If somebody says don't, our own people are saying, if the teacher beats the child, you go and make a complaint to the police. This is what will destroy India. If parents beat up the children, somebody goes and complains to the police, there is child abuse. That will destroy India. Women must have rights and not respect. That will destroy India. We respect women. In fact, I asked one of the social scientists, a woman. She said, no, we need rights and all that. You know, this I have been experiencing in 1995 or 96. I came down from the flight and I got into the bus. And a lady came with 2 bags in her hands. And I immediately stood up and gave her the seat. She said, do you mean to say I am so weak? I said, I am too weak to sit before you when you are standing. Anyhow, but I am saying this perversion in women's thinking. That when you respect them, they feel that you are calling them weak. This will destroy India. We have to build the civilizational base of India. And that is what great institutions, our spiritual institutions, even the community institutions in India are doing this work, and they have begun doing it massively in the last 15-20 years. So this is an important point for us to remember, that there will be institutional fights. Vivekananda International Institution, Ajit Doval, in a way, I was associated with him, we jointly put it together. And one sentence only we put in the trust deed, that we will not accept foreign donations. It became such a respectable institution. All other institutions have lost their space. We have taken over the strategic thinking space in Delhi. It's not difficult. But the fact is, we have got to be strategic in our approach. So, there is a situation in the world. We talked about ESG. I'll tell you today, ESG is finished by Ukraine war, because all the environmentally noble policies of Europe has been given up and they are going back to coal. Games have changed. Rules have changed. Every country is becoming powerful. Even those liberal countries are becoming nationalist. Today you must understand, in Italy, an ultra-nationalist woman has been elected as the leader. You know, every society is reacting. Modernity is the most oppressive regime in the world. It's not communism. It's not dictatorship. It is modernity. Because if I am wearing a tikka, I am unmodern, I am anti-modern, I am not suitable to time, I am a bigot. This one thing is sufficient. My brain or my capacity, my views, nothing matters. Modernity defines persons and destroys them by what it does not like. Even communism doesn't do it. This is being resisted in the world. Why Islamic nations are cooperating with India under Modi? It's because they feel West is a bigger threat. So we have got to form global alliances. In fact, most of the American institutions were sustained by oil money. Then they were sustained by the Chinese money. I tell you, most of these institutions are dependent on stock market support. If the stock market collapses by 30%, there will be no work in Harvard, there will be no work in Stanford. Because they have put all their energy, all their work, all their funds, all their capital in stock market. I will tell you in 2 minutes how the West is sitting on tenterhooks. The one unknown part which the US social security system has put out is, in America, social security, you pay the social security tax. You need not have to take care of your parents, elders, nobody. You need not have to take care of your children. So it was all working very well, so long as the population was growing and there was more working population and less non-working population. And money was coming more and less expenditure was there. But now it has turned from 2009. The money that you have to spend for the elderly population is more than the money that the younger population is contributing. And if the entire American population is to be, today's population is to be taken care of, they need $66 trillion, against which they do not have even $1 in reserve. Because it is not funded. Provident fund is a fund. You contribute and that money is there. In America, there is no fund. Somebody contributes and you spend. And the future liability is unfunded. This is a dynamite under the American. And a simple thing. How our lifestyle contributes to economic stability. In America in 1960, there were 3.31 persons per household. Today it is 2.61. This reduction of just 0.8 persons per household has meant 42 million more houses to be built, and the cost of it was $12 trillion. But you look at India, from 1951 to 2011, there has been very little change in the number of people residing in one house. if the number of persons, which was 5.5 at that time, now by 5.4, if the number of Indians living in a family that reduces by 1, you know how many more million houses we will be needing? We cannot afford to build those houses. This is the civilizational foundation of India, the family system, the women, the respect for parents, elders, teachers. This is the foundation of the Indian economy, savings. We have to nurture and sustain that. Then we can have institutional fights. And the whole idea of the West is how to destroy this. How to destroy the non-formal family, non-formal community, non-formal religion. We have to nurture this. So my feeling is, even as we discuss these points, we have got to understand that we have our own great strengths. The world is shifting. We have to play the game at the global level. And the person who is talking in the language in which I am talking is Putin. He has said the Western civilization is going to end. Their economy, which is founded only on bloated money, will end. You know how many $1 trillion exported out of America, not under the control of America, is circulating outside America? $35 trillion. I was surprised by this data. If this money returns to America, America will be washed away in the flood of dollars. There will be no American economy. So my feeling is, we have also to work out a strategy as to how to bring down the Western power. Western power is sustaining Western institutions, the respect for the West, their color, their dress, their language, their literature. So ultimately the battle will be against the Western power. And India's rise is bothering the West. The more attack that is coming against us is because India is so rising today. In fact, in Japan, there was a cartoon. In both the G7 and what is it? Where we have an Indian, Brazil and China. In all this, on both sides, people are holding Modi's hands. BRICS. On both sides, people are holding Modi's hand. Modi has not said one word about X or Y. But everybody wants India, everybody wants Modi. And in fact, G7 countries, which never used to respect India, they say, no, we want India. You know, without India, the liberal democracies constitute just 12% of global population. Only with India, they constitute 30+% of the population of the world. And 56% of the world is under dictatorship. So we must have a global view. So I would request Rajiv ji, he must also start a debate on how to counter this, not only academically, but also strategically, with which institutions we can work. I'll give you a small example and close. When I met the Japanese Prime Minister Abe, one of the greatest losses that not only India, Asia, the traditional world was the assassination of Abe. When I had a discussion with him, you know, he was very open. He said two things. Mr. Gurumoorthy, of course, they speak only in Japanese, it has to be translated. They know English. They won't talk in English. So, he said, you know, all the buildings you see outside the Prime Minister's place, it's all beautiful, newly built. There's an old building. You know why we have kept it like this? This is the place where we signed the surrender to the Americans. We want to keep it like this to make us remind that we have done this. Second thing he said was even more important. He said, know what these people think? These G7 countries, they kept on talking. Our way of life is in danger. Our value systems are in danger. Then Abe asked, what is the value systems you are talking about? It's a Christian value system. He said, that's not our value system. This is what Abe said. You know, you must understand the world needs a very powerful alternative model, and that model can come only from India because it's not an intellectual model, it is a functioning model. A functioning model is more important than a model in the library. Thank you very much.